I'm Tom Dyer, I'm 22.
So, what were you into acting?
When I was quite young, I started, when I was watching films, I started mimicking the things, like the voices that I was hearing, and then eventually I started doing it more and more, and then doing it at school, and that. It went from there, really.
So, which actor is your greatest inspiration, would you say?
That's a hard one, but if I had to pick, I'd probably be someone like Ian McKellen.
Great. Yep, go.
So my mother, the whore, I tell her I want to go out to my Uncle Hugh's, and the man she's with. Well, anyway, I walked, limped, really, 6 miles out of town. Man, oh man, it hurt. I mean, I didn't know aspirin or nothing. I mean, I'm out there, it's dark, and I can see all these lights. And that's when I see this monster floating up there. Man, I almost peed myself. I mean, I started running. If there was an Olympic race in the Olympics, let me tell you, I'd have won it that night. I burst in on my Uncle Hugh, and he didn't even know I was coming, but I'm crying, and it was all kinds of messed. And he stands up, he hugs me, puts me in a car, and takes me on out there. It's a coyote, that's all it was. Hung up on the fence. First I figure, maybe it got caught, but then he brings me a little closer and he shows me the bullet hole. He shot it, beat on it too while it was wounded, and then put it up there. So he takes me on home, feeds me, he puts me to bed, but he can see I'm still upset about it. I mean, no kid wants to see no animal get hurt. And that's when he sits down and tells me the coyotes is predators, and it's all right to kill predators, and that's why he put it up there as a warning. Death to predators. That's when he told me about the Jews and about the cabal and everything, and how they is using niggers and mud people to turn us into animals and enslave us. And my Uncle Hugh, he had a beautiful speaking voice. He'd been on the radio. A couple days later, he takes me on out to Mr. George's place. I mean, you remember him, Terrence George Terrence, the black guy. Well, anyway, he's got this big old barn, and it was like easily 100, 150 people plus. Young, old, babies feeding on their mamas, everyone. And Mr. George, he calls me up to the front, and he asked me if I'll swear my allegiance. I say, sure, and we do, and I look back and I see Hugh, and he's smiling. And I get off the stage, and all these people are reaching out to me, they're shaking my hand, hugging me, and then there's just all this love. I mean, you put me in your paper if you want, John. You write anything you want about me, it don't matter none. I'm a lucky man, John. A lucky man. I'm ready.
Okay, action.
So my mother, the whore, I tell her that I want to go out to my Uncle Hugh's, and the man she's with. So anyway, I walked, limped really, 6 miles out of town. Man, oh man, that hurt. And I didn't have no aspirin or nothing. When I'm out there, it's dark, and I can see all these lights. And that's when I see this monster floating up there. I know. But, man, I almost peed myself. And I ran all the rest of the way to my Uncle Hugh's. If there was a limping race in the Olympics, I would have won it that night. So I burst in on my uncle. He didn't know I was coming or nothing. And I'm crying, and oh man, it was a mess. So takes me out, puts me in his truck, and he drives me on out there, right? It was a coyote. That's all it was. It was hung up there on a fence. I figure he must have got caught, but then he brings me a little closer and he shows me the bullet hole. He shot it. Then he beat on it too while it was wounded. Then he put it on up there. So he takes me back, feeds me, and he puts me to bed. And, you know, he can see that I'm still upset about it. No kid wants to see an animal get hurt, right? And he sits down and he tells me that coyotes is predators, and it's all right to kill predators, and that's why I put it up there as a warning. Death to predators. And that is when he told me about the Jews and how they is predators, and about the cabal and everything, and how they are using the niggers and the mud people, turn us into animals and enslave us. And my Uncle Hugh, he had an absolutely beautiful voice. Could have been on the radio. A couple days later, he takes me on out to Mr. George's place. You know, remember him, Terrence George Terrence, the black guy? Well, anyway, he has this huge barn on his land, and there's 150 people out there. Young, old, babies feeding on their mamas, all kinds. And Mr. George, he calls me up to the front, and he asks me if I will swear my allegiance. I say, sure. And we do. And I look back, and my Uncle Hugh is smiling. When I get down from the stage, all these people, they're reaching out to me, they're touching me, shaking my hand, hugging me, and then there's just all this love. You know, you can put me in your paper if you want, but you can write anything you want about me, John. It don't mean one bit. So I'm a lucky man, John. I am a lucky man.